Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Seamus, what's the biggest thing that you've learned since you've been buying rentals?
Dan, that's a good question because there's so much I've learned. But I think the largest is just to be flexible and willing to pivot as things change so that you can kind of keep your eye on creating a successful portfolio as opposed to too glued to maybe your original plan.
Things can change, and sometimes if something's not working, you got to pivot and try something different. And Seamus has been very successful in changing his strategy and trying new things, and it's actually worked out pretty well for him. On the podcast today, we're going to walk through his story and figure out the pivots that he's had to make over the years. Joining us on the show today from Fort Collins, Colorado, is Seamus Nally. We'll take a quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Seamus. Are you looking for a rental income without the headaches? Mid-South Home Buyers handles everything from renovations to in-house property management in both Memphis and Little Rock. They have turnkey cash-flowing properties available for purchase today. Just visit midsouthhomebuyers.com right now to view their inventory and start your journey. That's midsouthhomebuyers.com. Billion-dollar investors don't typically park their cash in high-yield savings accounts. Instead, they often use one of the premier passive income strategies for institutional investors, private credit. Now the same passive income strategy is available to investors of all sizes thanks to the Fundrise Income Fund, which has more than $600 million invested and a 7.9% distribution rate. With traditional savings yields falling, it's no wonder private credit has grown to be a $1 trillion asset class in the last few years. Visit fundrise.com/RIP to invest in the Fundrise Income Fund in just minutes. That's Fundrise, FUNDRISE.com/RIP. The fund's total return in 2025 was 8%, and the average annual return since inception is 7.8%. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Current distribution rate as of 12/31/2025. Carefully consider the investment material before investing, including objectives, risk, charges, and expenses. This and other information can be found in the Income Fund's perspective at fundrise.com/income. This is a paid advertisement. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property, and when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Seamus, let's start off talking about your portfolio. What does your portfolio look like today?
Yeah, so my portfolio has gone up and grown, and then it's shrunk a little bit recently. We had a max of 22 doors. Today, we're sitting just under 10.
Why did you sell off some properties?
Yeah, so what we started buying rentals, and I keep saying we, but that's because I partnered with my younger brothers, actually. We started buying rentals shortly after we all got out of college back in 2013. And they're all rehabs, right? We kind of took the Burr approach and bought a bunch of rentals near a local university where we grew up in upstate New York. And our goal was really to provide college off-campus housing. It didn't seem like there was a lot, and most of the quality was honestly pretty rough. And we figured that the college students deserved more since my siblings and I all lived off campus when we went to university, and it was a big part of growing up and honestly the joy that we took out of the experience. So we wanted to see if we could provide that with some better quality living in Schenectady, New York.
Okay, so then you sold off some of the properties, like
yeah. So fast forward to today, what we realized as we have done the rehabs and done the refinance, followed that Burr process, that we've reached a really strong equity position in some of those properties. And so the opportunity to sell and get some of those benefits has been very attractive. And so we've done that. The other thing that's changed about the neighborhood that we were buying in, because we were trying to concentrate our portfolio all in kind of within a couple blocks of the same neighborhood. And what we're seeing, which is really awesome, is we bought and rehabbed some of these properties that were in previously really rough conditions. The other properties around have really started to be rehabbed as well. And individuals are actually looking to move there and purchase homes as primaries as opposed to just renting. And so that's also made that market more attractive. And that's been attractive despite like today's housing market nationwide isn't very attractive, but we're actually in that neighborhood, in that area, we're still seeing a lot of demand for high quality properties that have been rehabbed and jump out to the eye.
So the prices are going up, but are the rents not keeping up? Like, is the property, the appreciation rate, is that greater than the rental appreciation rate?
It has been, and I would say one disadvantage in this space. So a lot of good things, the prices going up is the local taxes, property taxes are quite high. I mean, New York State in general has quite high taxes. And so when we looked at our cash flow, it's been kind of slowly chipped away because of an increase in expense. And that's where we did the calculus and said, listen, let's go ahead and sell a couple of these properties, reap the benefits of the last 12 years we've put into them, because that's kind of our best financial outcome at this time. We're still holding some of them, which are happily rented, low maintenance, and allow us kind of some reoccurring cash flow into the future.
So then are you looking at other areas that maybe have more opportunity, or like, so
Yeah.
I guess what are you doing with that money?
So one of the awesome things about doing projects with your family is, it gives you an opportunity to grow a little bit closer. The other thing is there's a reality that our lives have changed, right? Went from purchasing these shortly after graduating college to now all of us have families and kids. And so what we decided to do is actually disperse those funds to each individual. Me personally, I'm actually looking to build out my portfolio in Colorado where I live now. My wife and I own one rental here, and so we plan to actually take this money and put it back into rentals a little bit closer to where we're currently located.
Wow. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And that kind of leads with the topic of today's show, with having to pivot, that you've pivoted your entire portfolio as things have changed and things have evolved in your life. And I want to talk about some of the other times that you've pivoted. Now, tell me about the college rentals. So you bought properties initially intending to rent them to college students, but then things changed. What happened?
Yeah, so our hypothesis, and this was actually due to a project my younger brother did in college, a business plan he put together, is we noticed there was just poor opportunities for off-campus housing in Schenectady, New York. And so we got excited about that and purchased our first property. It was a duplex, and we actually split it into room rentals with the idea of us housing college kids, right, and renting by the room. What actually happened at the exact same time is the university went ahead and bought like 2 or 3 blocks worth of previously blighted properties and started a massive rehab to expand their housing options for students. And so what started out to be really exciting with a lot of need and a lot of demand there kind of like evaporated, honestly, in the period of about a summer before kids started coming back to campus. And so that first year we were able to house some college students in that property, but it pretty quickly became apparent that we were going to have to pivot, and going after college students in that area specifically was not going to be the long-term draw, because it was obvious that the university had made a commitment to increase its housing availability pretty significantly.
So then, did you just find other people that were looking to rent rooms, or did you switch to like a traditional long-term rental?
Yeah, so there was a bit of a transition period where we found some students that were, going to a local community college and found some young professionals. We had a traveling nurse in there at one point. So we did that at first, but the other thing we started doing, and my brother Brendan deserves a lot of credit for this, is he started creating really strong relationships in the city with different programs. And so what ended up happening is we transitioned to partnering with a local program that was trying to find and sponsor housing for individuals that had struggled with addiction, and kind of previous challenges in life. And so we partnered with them and started actually doing room rentals with them, which was fantastic at the start. The program had a really strong influence over the participants, which made honestly for some really great room rentals for a block of 4 or 5 years. So that was a fantastic supply. And during that time, we also bought more properties in that same area. A couple of which were single families, and we just would rent out long term, more traditional. And then two of them we also turned into kind of room rentals and used partnerships with local programs in order to fill them.
So did the numbers still work? Like where you had initially planned to rent to college students? What was the addiction program? Were they paying a comparable rent?
Yeah, we actually charged the exact same thing. So we didn't change our pricing at all. So yeah, they still worked. I think it definitely took a bit of a leap of faith, right? When you think about providing housing for those individuals, right? Their credit worthiness and some of the other things that you're going to look at is not necessarily there. And so it took a lot of belief in the program itself and the individuals that were running that program and how influential they were in the individuals' lives to kind of get us there. And once again, I'll say if it wasn't for my brother Brendan, and the relationship he built with that program, I don't think there's any way we would have done it. I would not have been so bold as to do so. But from a numbers standpoint, we were cash flowing the exact same thing, and it worked out fairly well.
Wow. I mean, that's really good thinking, and, really good to, that your brother was kind of thinking on his feet and trying to find other opportunities. Well, was there a lot more hassle with dealing with people with addictions, like maybe more drama in the house that you had to get involved with?
There wasn't at first. As the relationship continued with the program, there was some turnover there, and we started to find that the influence the program had on the individuals that were becoming our tenants seemed to have weakened. And so as that happened, there was some more drama between roommates. There was a couple of instances where individuals were getting back into some of those destructive habits that they had previously on the property, which was not acceptable and not good for the local neighborhood and community, honestly. So we eventually, after a run of a handful of years, we eventually did reduce our work with that program to just one property, and then eventually moved away from room rentals altogether. And where you take a little bit of hit in cash flow because of the lack of drama, the lack of turnover, it ended up being worth it to us based on where our portfolio was at that time. I'll definitely say the room rentals were so important early on because it was a better cash flow than a typical long term would have been. And that cash flow allowed us to invest in other properties, which was really, really key. So I don't think we would have been able to build our portfolio with the same velocity without the early room rentals.
And then also a number of years has gone by. So as you transitioned, I guess like the transition you made was turning that property into a traditional long-term rental. Is that right?
Yes. Exactly. We went back to kind of the traveling nurses a little bit, in some room rentals for a short period of time, and then just decided, yeah, like the one duplex that we had that was previously an 8-room rental, we just turned kind of into a duplex and rented out each floor.
And so were the rents higher when you actually went to a long-term rental because a number of years had gone by? Were the rents higher than you could have gotten when you first bought the property?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that we tried to do a good job of and stay consistent with is just keep an eye on what market rents were. One of the pieces, and I mentioned this when I shared how we had sold or have started to sell some of these properties, is as we were rehabbing the properties in the neighborhood, and other people were as well, rent prices were going up in the neighborhood, from what we could tell. And honestly, I always encourage people to look at the listing sites, what people are renting for, and some of the other tenants that lived in the neighborhood, and just literally asking, hey, what do you pay for rent? Kind of give us some good intel. So we tried to increase price alongside what the market was doing. So there was never huge jumps on anyone, a percent or two at a time. By the time we went from room rentals though back into long term and renting them the duplex out, for example, as two full units, rent prices had increased an incredible amount. I mean, I think the whole country saw that, right? From
Yeah.
2000 to like 2024, just this wild increase in rent prices. Our local area had done the same as well. So
Now, you live in Colorado today. The rentals are in New York. Were you always living in Colorado?
I wasn't. I was back in New York for a short period of time, and then that's still where my family lives. So we head back there often. But if it wasn't for the systems that we had put in place and the partnership with my brothers, it would have been a lot more challenging renting out of state. But thanks to having an awesome team and processes that we used a lot of software to create the processes, it really made management and overview quite straightforward.
Sometimes doing business with family can be tricky. Has there been any difficult times where maybe it's been a little touchy working with your family?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone knows that you speak to family in a different way
Yeah.
than you would in a business relationship. So there was definitely, and we're siblings. There's definitely some pretty good heated arguments,
Yeah.
that were kind of harkened back to fighting over N64 controller when playing Mario Kart. The
Yeah.
same sort of battles. But what I think all of us realized, we were family and had that kind of built-in love and respect for each other. But then the other piece was we realized that as each of us grow up and go different directions and have our own families and have our own careers as well, that we would have to stay flexible and change the makeup of the portfolio based on that. And that's part of the reason, that we've sold some of these properties is just out of a desire to stay flexible and make sure that we weren't coming in the way of any of our personal financial or family financial goals.
Yeah. So it's you. Is it just one brother that you're doing this
No,
with?
no. So I've got two younger brothers
Okay.
are part of the team and have invested, and then actually a third younger brother has helped with some of the rehab process. He's a contractor, so that's been fantastic as well.
Now, tell me about the community events that you do and how that's helped you.
Yeah, so my brother Brendan really passionate about the neighborhood and making sure that we weren't just landlords in the community, but we were also making a positive impact. And so from the very beginning, we started to put on or take advantage of different holidays where people would be out and about. So hot dog cookout on 4th of July, right? Or around 4th of July weekend, where we're just inviting anyone that lives in the neighborhood, like, come on out, no pressure. We would throw a tent up with the name of our business on it, get a grill going, and just hand out a bunch of hot dogs, right? We do the same thing on Halloween, right? As kids are out trick or treating, trying to make sure that we are going above and beyond and creating kind of a centralized location for them to come, as opposed to going to all of our tenants' properties. And it's been massively beneficial, both in the respect that we've gained in the neighborhood, which I absolutely think translates to people taking better care of the property. But also, we hear about deals, and a lot of the growth that we've had is because we've been out and present in the neighborhood, and people knew that we were looking to continue to invest in the neighborhood, and so they would bring deals to us, which was absolutely awesome. So we found some off-market deals as a result of just being present in the community.
And then also, I got to imagine you just knowing neighbors and having that connection, maybe the neighbors would tell you if something wasn't looking right at one of your properties.
Absolutely. And it was important too for us that the tenants, we were okay with tenants knowing each other, right? Even if they're in two of the different properties, and they would get to know each other. But yeah, that also gave us another kind of set of eyes on the property. We had a couple of tenants that, one worked in landscaping. And so we actually paid him to do the landscaping on all of our properties, which was fantastic as well.
Yeah.
And so we would try to take advantage of having that presence in the space, in the area to give us more confidence in the direction of our portfolio, but also get rid of the boogeyman. I would say that
Yeah.
it can be the landlord at times, and that a lot of our tenants, whether you're a college student or traveling nurse, or you're coming out of, like the addiction programs, those individuals are used to landlords just being this kind of scary, oppressive figure, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
we really wanted to buck that trend as much as possible.
Now, let me ask you a few questions about how you manage your properties. When rent's coming due, do you send out any kind of reminder just to remind tenants that first of the month's coming up, rent's going to be due soon? Or do you just count on them that they're going to remember to pay rent?
Yes. So this is one of the biggest changes in our process, and something that's been in this has been one of the biggest changes in our process, and something that happened independently of this portfolio is I actually met the founder of Turbo Tenant, and started working with him in 2018, and actually took over as CEO of Turbo Tenant, which is a software platform that provides tools for landlords that are managing their properties. And before that happened, right? Because we were managing these properties for 5 years or so before that relationship started, and we moved all of our portfolio to TurboTenant. We weren't doing a lot of those reminders. We weren't heavily organized, and it did seem, or it was more challenging to manage it remotely because we didn't have the systems in place. We started adding all of those systems. And to come back to your question around rent reminders, that's one of the biggest changes. And it's as I get an opportunity now to talk to a lot of landlords in my job. And as I talk to them, the amount that are experiencing late rent, right? Maybe just a couple days every month, and it's like an annoyance, but not enough to actually take action on an eviction or something like that. The first thing I ask is, "Hey, are you sending reminders?" That same question you asked me, Dan.
Mhm.
Are you sending reminders? Are they automated and coming out the same time every month, right? Do you have automatic late fees in place so that renters know there's some consequence in being late and in missing payments? And the vast majority of them say no. And once we get them, on the system, and that process all automated, a lot of those late rents disappear, as do a lot of the excuses that you would get back. When you text your tenant and say, "Hey, you're 4 days late on rent. Is that coming soon?" I had gotten really accustomed in the first handful of years managing the properties to see a huge long text message back of every excuse possible, right? And while I was empathetic, there was a contract between me and the tenant that said I will provide quality housing for their rent. And so when we turned it into a process where it happened automatic, I no longer received any of those excuses, which has been fantastic, and it's allowed me to keep a better relationship with our tenants.
Yeah, I also think that's a great idea to have the late fee be automatic. That way you're not having to negotiate with the tenant or having to maybe start a fight with them over the late fee. It's just automatic. It just gets added to their account. I really like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And right after the grace period, and you can set up their grace period yourself. It's just tacked on. So when they go to pay that rent, they have to include the late fee in the payment.
Now, how do you guys do maintenance requests in Turbo Tenant?
Yeah, so this is an area that, once again, when I was managing without any processes in place, I'd get maintenance requests in all different methods, right? Sometimes you'd get text messages, phone calls, you might get an email. what we've done with Turbo Tenant is we've really tried to simplify that. The first thing is, as a landlord, you can add in your lease how you want maintenance requests to be received, right? And so with the lease agreements, you can build on Turbo Tenant. If you don't have your own, you can require that they all come through the Turbo Tenant platform, because there's a mobile app for tenants, right? So your tenants, they have their own view. And so all of our tenants submit their maintenance requests right through the Turbo Tenant platform. And what the platform actually does when they're submitting a request is, through the use of AI, we actually ask them a couple questions and go back and forth. So, for example, I'm sure many of our audience out there has received a maintenance request that says the sink's leaking, right? And I don't know about you, but in all my properties, there's at least two sinks. There's at least a kitchen sink and there's a bathroom sink.
Right.
And I'd love to know which one they're talking about, right? I'd also love to know how long has it been happening, right? Did they turn off the water? Is it actively leaking, or is it just dripping, right? There's all these questions that you immediately have, that we're now able to actually triage and ask through the use of AI, including giving tips like, hey, make sure to shut off go under the sink. There's a shut off to the water and shut it off there, right? We're able to provide all that through AI. So by the time the maintenance request actually comes to the landlord, or in this case comes to me, it has all the details. I know it's the kitchen sink. I know they went through and they shut off the water already. I know that it started leaking 2 days ago. And I know that they consider it urgent, right? And something I should react to immediately. And that allows me to just take action way faster, right, than I typically would, as opposed to the back and forth that usually occurs when a maintenance request comes in.
It's a huge time saver. The name of the software, again, is Turbo Tenant. And if you want to check it out, just go to turbotenant.com. I'd like to thank Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group for sponsoring today's episode. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether you're just getting started or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to Chaley. She's a nationwide lender. She has a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something that works for you. And right now, she's offering a free 30-minute strategy session. If you want to take advantage of that, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. Make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button on whatever app you're listening to the show on, and that way you'll be notified when the next episode comes out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.